Hello everyone! Today we'll talk about the solution to the problem count vowel strings in ranges. This is a pretty straightforward problem that can be split into two parts. Since it's asking us to answer queries and every query wants us to count the number of good strings within the bounds of that query, and whether or not a string is good does not depend on the query, then the two parts would be, first of all, to pre-calculate for every string if that string is good, and second, answer queries. So maybe let's start with the second part, which is more standard. How do we answer queries where each query gives us a left and right end of an interval and asks us to count the number of good strings within that interval? Well, since this is essentially just the same thing as a sum of that subrange, sum of that subarray, we can use any technique that we want, but the best technique is probably using prefix sums. In other words, the number of good strings between L and R is the number of good strings from the beginning up to R minus the number of good strings from the beginning up to just before L. And we can pre-calculate it as a simple array. And of course, in order to check if a string is good, well, there is nothing to be done here. We just have to check if it starts and ends with a vowel. So let's start with that first part. To check if a string starts and ends with a vowel, we have many different ways. Here, this is an opportunity for me to showcase how you can use Python sets and pretty natural operators that are overloaded when it comes to sets. So to check if it starts and ends with a vowel, we can first create a set of all vowels. So again, string here is essentially a collection and iterable, so we can just write set of string, and this is a set of all the letters of that string. So these are our vowels. And now we want to create a set of vowels that, or letters for every word that that word starts and ends with. So we take word of 0, we take word of -1, so the last character, and we convert it into a set. And how do we check if one set is fully contained, or at least is a subset of another set? Well, we can just use standard comparison as if we were operating on numbers. So we want vowels to be greater than or equal to this set. Of course, it will never be equal because it's larger, but if those two are incomparable, so this one has an element that this one does not have, then this will be false. This thing will be false, right? So for every word in words, this is either true or false, and this is our pre-calculation. Pre-calculated for our word, for every word in our words, this value. And now for our prefix sum, we started with 0, and now for every word, whether or not it's okay, we append the previous prefix sum plus the value of okay. And another situation here that, of course, we are using Python, so those are booleans within this list comprehension, but we can add, when we have an integer and we add a boolean, then this will be either 1 if that boolean is true or 0 if that boolean is false, exactly what we want. And now the result is again a list comprehension. What we return is, as I mentioned, the sum up to R minus sum up to just before L. Since we start with the sum of the empty prefix, everything is shifted by 1. So this is R plus 1 and L instead of R and L minus 1. And of course that's for LR in queries. And that's the whole solution.